Hello and welcome to episode number 16 of the Tweedle Eat Tweedle Run podcast, where Steph and I document our Run Disney adventures at both Disney World and Disneyland parks. I'm Cord, and this is Steph.
Hello, and as always, oh my gosh, I'm butchering this on our Sweet 16. So as always, you can interact with us via social media at Instagram at Tweedle Eat Tweedle Run, or you can email us at tweedleeattweedlerun@gmail.com. Listen to us at Spotify, and you can watch our beautiful faces on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe if you want to hear more. On today's episode, we don't have a whole lot to talk about, but we figured we'd chat a little bit about how we like to plan our trips and some little bit of insight into some of the Disney lingo that is out there. Because I know that sometimes we throw around words that if you're in the process of planning your first Disney trip, at least I felt this way when Court would talk about stuff. I have no idea what she's talking about. So this is a good little listen for some beginners out there who want to learn how to plan their perfect Disney trip. So
Yes. And also for, anyone who's doing it again, like, we plan a lot of trips and we have a lot of trips coming up. And, if you're interested in sort of how do we decide what things we're going to do or, how do we keep things organized, we'll kind of walk you through it. So we'll go into the lingo first, Steph. So we have a few things that people have like asked us or, we've made comments and they're like, what, sorry, what is that? So we thought we'd kind of run through a few of those and then we'll jump into how we sort of plan our trips. And by we, I mean me, because really I
it's true.
plan all of our trips. And then I usually tell Steph, hey, what do you think about this?
And I'm pretty much a passenger princess that's just like, yes, I like this. I will go along. I don't mind. And the excuse I give for this behavior is that being a physiotherapist, I plan everybody's life except my own every day, all day. So it's nice to not have to think about it.
And it's why we travel so well together, Steph, because I love
It's so true.
planning it. It brings me so much joy. And then you're just like, yeah, sure, sounds great. So let's get into our lingo. So, Steph, I will give you a term and you
Ooh,
are going to define it for us as best you can.
all right.
You're not a newbie anymore, Steph.
No,
So
I'm not. I've
you're pretty
officially
far from it.
been I've been officially more than the average person goes. So yes.
Definitely.
Conti-
Yeah. Or you've
Continue.
been more times potentially than people have will ever go in their whole life, right? Like in
Yes,
the
I
last
I
year. Yeah.
have been more than my husband will definitely ever go.
Uh, unless against his will. Yes. Okay,
Yes.
first term. When we say rope drop, what do we mean?
So rope drop means that we will be at the start of the line as soon as it's time to get into the park. So you can rope drop the gates when you first get to the park to get into the park. But then once they let you in the first set of gates, you could be at the rope where they've marked off the magical area that you can't go past until a certain amount of time.
Yes, and in some parks they actually have a physical rope. So the cast members, which we will get to, but the cast members will actually hold a rope, and that's where they hold everyone until they're ready for everyone to be allowed into the park. And it's important to note, a lot of people don't realize when the park says that it opens at 8 a.m., it opens earlier. It
It
will
sure
open
does.
at 7 a.m., 7:30, 7:15. So, getting there for rope drop doesn't mean getting there for 8 a.m. It usually means getting there about an hour before the official time the park opens. Because a lot of time, especially depending how busy it is, and do they have the rides up and running already, is that they'll let you in. You could be on rides before the official time that the park opens. So
And it's a great way to bang off a bunch of rides that you A, don't want to pay a lightning lane for, or B, you want to hit more than once because you can just hop on it really quickly and get sometimes, depending on when rope drop is, you can get in a couple of those rides before the rest of the park even opens or before most people even realize the park is open.
yeah, exactly. So it is very beneficial. And I use the term now rope drop for many things in my life. So if I'm going to try and get somewhere before it opens so that I'm the first one in there, I will say I am rope dropping the grocery store because I need to be in and out before anyone gets there. I rope drop Costco. That's a great one to get there before it
Yeah.
officially opens because they always open it early.
We rope drop the roller rink on your birthday.
That's true. That was really just because of the timing. That's when we needed to go. But yep,
It's true.
definitely
We
rope
did it.
dropped it. So big one, rope drop. And then we've mentioned a couple other terms that we might as well kick out what they mean. Cast member. What am I talking about there, Steph?
Well, the cast member is a Disney employee. Every employee at Disney who has a lovely little name tag with their name is a cast member.
Yeah, they call them cast members because the idea is that you're basically in like, like a movie or something, right? And so instead of saying they're the employees, they say they're cast members. They're part of the magical performance that they're putting on for you. And cast members can make a big difference for your day. So always treat cast members very kindly because they actually are very empowered employees and they can sprinkle pixie dust at their discretion. And so it can make for a really great day.
For sure. They can make very magical things happen. Like stories I have heard are children get brand new stuffies from some store and then forget them on a ride or forget them somewhere and they get very upset and some stressed out parent will lament to a cast member and sometimes magically they get coupons for replacements at the gift shop. So
Yeah.
little things like that, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. And then another one we talked about was lightning lane. So this is a tricky one because they keep changing the names of
They do
everything.
keep changing it.
But
So,
go ahead, Steph.
all
What
right.
what are we talking about when we say lightning lane?
So the current lightning lane, these are the ones you pay for now, correct?
Yep.
Yes. So certain rides, like Rise of the Resistance, in order to ride it sooner, you cannot get well, I guess Fast Lane, Genie Plus, whatever you want to call it, to get into. You have to do an individual lightning lane. I guess, okay, fine. Regular lightning lanes, you pay for a fee. Then individual lightning lanes are when you pay to ride that specific ride. There we go. That
Yeah.
is the correct
Yeah,
definition,
I
right?
think of it as lightning lane as that's the mechanism to skip the line,
Yeah.
right? Lightning lane. And then there's different variations of how you can get into that lightning lane, whether it's you're paying just for that individual ride or whether you're paying the fee to be able to book for multiple rides for different attractions. So, and it is different. So the American parks both use like basically the same system. It has different rules. But then in other parks around the world, they use completely different things. They have what's called premier access. And so theirs is like more a la carte, just, hey, do you want to skip the line for this ride? This is the price. If you want to skip the line for this ride, this is the price. And they actually did just come out with a premier access one where you can pay an exorbitant amount of money to be able to
Yes.
just skip the line for any of the rides and you don't have to like book things in advance or whatever. It's just like
You
I've
pick what
got
you
this.
want.
Yeah, I got this pass and I can ride as much as I want. But I think the price, oh my goodness, I'm not going to remember, but it was like between three and $400 per person
I want to
US
say, yeah, it
for
was over 400 US. Plus, you
for a
had to be
day.
staying at one of the deluxe resorts.
Yeah. And that didn't
So,
include your park ticket. That was on top of your
no,
park ticket.
correct.
I'm like, oh
It
my
was
goodness,
insane.
it was
Absolutely
insane.
insane. Yeah.
Anyways, we won't be doing that stuff. That's not something we're going to do.
No,
We'll
I know.
we'll
I said we're adding it to the if we win the lottery list. That and a VIP tour being added to if we win the lottery list.
honestly, if you were going to pay for this premier pass, I'm like, I feel like you could almost, depending how large your family is, you might as well just get a VIP tour. Like it
Yeah?
doesn't seem like it's that far off of the
Mm-mm.
VIP tour price, and you'd get to skip the lines for everything, and you'd get all the backstage stuff, and feel all fancy because somebody in their plaid vest is walking you around the park.
Correct.
All right, next thing we'll define virtual queue. Now, this one I think is confusing for a lot of people because they maybe get the concept of the like skipping the line, lightning lane systems, which there's tons of blog posts and different ways you can learn up about that. But virtual queue is different. What's a virtual queue, Steph?
So the virtual queue is a queue you get onto through the app. And there are different rules at different parks depending on when you can get into the virtual queue, correct?
Yep.
And you will have virtual queues for different things. So, for example, when we were at Disney over my birthday, in order to get onto the line, get into actually at all the Haunted Mansion with the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay, we had to get into the virtual queue that is in the morning. Like I think that was one we could actually get into before we got into the park. So
Yeah,
it's
so
like
all
this,
the virtual queues will have different rules about how when you can
yeah,
join the virtual queue, but essentially it's that's a time, it's basically like you're joining the queue for the ride, but you can't join it until your virtual queue is called. So there's no true standby line. The difference between that and like the say the lightning lane is there's a standby line. Like if I want to, I can just get in line for Rise of the Resistance and I can wait an hour or 2 hours or whatever the standby wait is. And a lightning lane allows me to like skip the line, right? So I pay to skip the line. A virtual queue is they're basically saying there is no standby line. You can't just walk up to the attraction and join the line. You have to get into this virtual queue. And it's a way that when there's a really popular attraction, they've been doing it recently for new rides as they open, or like Steph mentioned, the Haunted Mansion Holiday because it's super popular. They make you join this virtual queue. You get a boarding group, and when your boarding group is called, you are allowed to go and join the lineup at that point. But it's not, you're not skipping the line. Like it's still, you're still waiting in line. Just, it can just depend what that lineup looks like and how when you join in, that kind of thing. But yeah, so virtual queue I know is kind of a bit of an anomaly and confusing. And they don't have to have virtual queues. And sometimes they'll have virtual queues. Like when we went for one of the Run Disney events, they had a virtual queue for the merchandise. So if you wanted
Yeah.
to go into the building where you could buy merch, you joined the virtual queue to get in because they didn't want a lineup, out the door while people were waiting to get in to go buy merch. So you had to join the virtual queue. So they can use it for different things, not just rides.
Yep. Something that I thought of while we were chatting, a term that we've used sometimes and isn't necessarily a very popular one. What is a tap style court?
Ooh, a tap style is when you are entering the park or when you are using the lightning lane to get on a ride, there's actually like this button thing, um it's got, what does it have on it? A
Mickey.
Mickey? Yeah, it's got a
Mickey.
Mickey
Yeah.
on it. Anyways, and you actually tap on it either with, if you're wearing a magic band, you can tap your magic band, or you can tap your phone, or if you get like a little card, you can tap your card, and it's what gives you access into the park. So when you're first scanning when you're first using the tap styles to get into the park, you also have to do a finger scan in Florida. You don't have to do it in California, which was nice for Steph because it kept not working when we were in Florida.
Correct.
And then you also would tap into those when you're using your lightning lane. So it's basically going to light up green, if you have a valid lightning lane and you can actually use that, or it'll show up blue if there's an issue, and then the cast members might say, well, you're a bit too early for your lightning lane time or whatever it is. So um, that's what the tap styles are.
Yes.
And then another term, park hopper stuff. What is a park hopper, or what's the difference between, a ticket that has park hopper or doesn't have park hopper?
So Park Hopper allows you to go to more than one park in a day. If you can buy a park ticket that will get you a one single park all day. So if you want to go to Magic Kingdom all day, you would get a single park ticket. And then Park Hopper would actually allow you to go to, say, Magic Kingdom in the morning, and then you could park hop to Hollywood Studios after 11 o'clock it is now. Yes?
I think in Florida, I don't think that there's any limit anymore for park hopping. The 11 a.m.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure is still just in
It's California.
California. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it would allow you to go to any and all parks at any
Yep.
particular time based on whatever the rules are that day.
It's how we did four parks 10K one day. We
Yeah.
just parked hop from park to park to park.
Yeah, and it's important to note that if you get park hopper, it's for your whole stay. You can't just say, okay, well, today I want park hopper, but for the other days of my trip, I don't. It's like you just pay the price to have the ability to park hop as opposed to saying, well, just today I want to go to two different parks. Like, well, if you get it for one day, you have it for your whole stay. So yeah, it can be great. I find Steph and I use it a lot, because we're two adults and we find it very easy. But every time that I go with my kids, with when we're in Florida, I've never gotten park hopper with my kids just because I find the logistics of packing them up from one park and then taking transportation to get to another park. It just we can't do it as quickly with the little people. And so it's just, I tend to try and do just, okay, we're at this park and we'll just focus on this park. And yeah, so it just depends on sort of what the dynamics of your group is and what makes sense for you. Um,
Totally.
Which is maybe a great segue then, Steph, into how do we go about even planning these trips?
It's true. How do we go about planning these trips, Court?
So I mean, we've been a lot of times. And so, for people who have been before, my favorite thing to do is start with a wish list. So, for Steph and I always start an Excel doc, and I will share it. Oh, Steph needs to allow me to share. Um, so while Steph's
I thought
doing
I did.
that, I always like to start an Excel doc just because that's my favorite thing ever is to see it all laid out. But I like to put on a little wish list and say, okay, what are the things that I really want to do this trip? So, for example, maybe the Tiana's ride just opened since the last time we've been there, which will be the case when we go in January. And so, that might be something that makes my wish list like I really want to do that. Or maybe there's some restaurants that we've never been to or a new experience that we want to do. And so I try and do that wish list. I do it with my kids too. When I'm planning trips, I'll say, okay, what do you really want to do? What's really important? Um, if this is your first time planning it, I think it's good to do that for each of the parks. So, like, if you're going to hit up, say, all four parks when you're in Florida, for each of the parks, you kind of say, okay, what are the top things that we want to do? Because there's so much to do
There
that
is.
it's not reasonable to be like, oh, we're going to do everything. And so by having those like must do's, it's a great way to prioritize. And then it also helps you understand, okay, like maybe Steph and I, all of the things we want to do are, let's say, in Epcot. Well, okay, well, then we need maybe more than one day at Epcot during that trip that we're going to go on. Or, um, you know, maybe nothing's in Epcot, and then we're just going to skip that one. Or, Animal Kingdom's a good example of, like we're looking at our trip coming up with our kids, and it's like, do we want to do Animal Kingdom? Because I'm like, my kids, who have obviously been before, don't really want to do Animal Kingdom because they don't like enough stuff there that's like, okay, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe we'll just skip that one.
Versus
But
my kids have never been to Florida, so I don't know if they will like Animal Kingdom or not. And then I have to realistically think about the rides that they can actually ride in Animal Kingdom because some of the really good rides, one out of three of my children will be able to ride it. The other two will not. So it's like, well, I don't know if it's worth it or
And that's a
now
that's a great point, Steph, is like, looking at things like height restrictions on rides, or even just considering what rides your kids are going to want to do. If they have never been on any rides, it's a little harder to decide, but if they've been on a lot of rides. So, like I said, so I usually put a wish list of what we want to do. I always put down the trip dates that we're going so that I know sort of these are our parameters, these are the dates that we're working with. And then I like to look at things like, okay, so let's say we're going to book dining reservations. All right, when do those open? Those open 60 days ahead. So I usually put a date so I know when my dining reservations are going to open so I can make a note or a reminder in a calendar and like, actually remember to book my dining reservations at that time. Or in January, Steph and I are hoping to go to the spa after
yes.
Steph does her dopey to max and relax. And so, making a note of, okay, well, when do those reservations open? So that we can make sure that we get everything booked. And a lot of things it's better to book ahead so that way you have it booked in. And then, if you want to change your mind, you're saying, oh, never mind, we want to change things around. At least you have it booked in. You can always cancel it. But just make sure, you read what the cancellation policies are. Um, things like the Christmas parties or Halloween parties, you can't, those are non-refundable, but some of like the dessert parties that you can book extra, most of those are refundable within, sort of 5 days before. So it allows you some flexibility there. Um, and so then it's basically like, okay, now we have our wish list of things. We kind of know the dates of when we're going. And then I usually will put together these details of sort of what we want to do. And they don't start off looking like this. They start off with like, okay, we wanted to go for breakfast here and I slotted in one day. Or, for Steph and I, since we're doing the races, it's like, okay, what are the race days? Okay. And where are we staying? A really good tip is to pick your dining based on where you're staying, right? So if you're staying in the boardwalk area and you have access to the Skyliner, maybe that is a different set of places you want to go and visit and places you want to eat compared to if you're staying in like the monorail section or all the way in Animal Kingdom.
You
So I
want to
I
know a fun tip? This is how
Yeah.
Court actually plans all of her trips and not just Disney trips. I'm just throwing that out there. Continue.
It's true. It's true. I have an upcoming trip to Norway with my family, and there's definitely one of these spreadsheets as well.
This is how
Uh,
she introduced travel to my husband and I many years ago now.
yeah.
They sent us this spreadsheet and we were just like, what is going on? But now this is how I plan my trips as well. So
It's great. And then I like to do the backwards math, which I do all the time because my kids are in rep sports, but I like to do the backwards math of like, okay, what time is, um, what time do we want a rope drop? Okay, so then what time does that mean we have to get up? And, so I'll even sometimes put up like, what's our wake up time? I'll make notes of like, what are we doing for breakfast? Are we doing it in the room? Are we picking it up somewhere? So then you can start planning ahead to like, should I do a grocery order? Because maybe I want to have some food in the room, or no, we're always going to eat in the parks or on the go. So, we don't need snacks in the room. So just thinking through some of the logistics of that. And then I always put like, okay, once I actually have the dining reservations, I like to change the color. So I might put it in like pink or red, like saying this is kind of what I want. This is my ideal plan. And then once I've booked it, I might make it green so that I know that it's booked or whatever. So, and then Steph and I like to come up with like little fun challenges that we can do. So that's why we did the 4 parks and 10K in one day. That's why we did our epic failure of every Disneyland ride in one
ride.
day.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah, so we're always kind of coming up with things that we maybe want to do for fun or challenge ourselves. So we'll see if there's stuff we want to do for our upcoming trips. And then you just kind of go from there. There's lots and lots of resources that you can use. Some of my favorite that I still even use. I love trip report shows. So I love the podcasts you can listen to that have trip reports. I drive around a lot with getting my kids to their sports, so podcasts are great for me. But WDW Prep School to Go is probably one of my favorites for trip reports. I like listening to like what people do. It gives you a good idea. There's a lot of variety. So like if you're traveling with like young kids, you can find trip reports from people that went with toddlers and you can kind of hear what their experience was. If you listen to episode 361, you can hear about my trip with my family when we went to Japan because I was a trip report guest on that one. Disney Food Blog is a great one. That's one that Paula used when she was planning her trip. It's a YouTube one, but it's great, especially for kids, because there's lots of like fun graphics and there's a lot of good like best of lists. So like best places to eat or best rides or this and that. And it's a great like starting point of like, oh my goodness, this is so overwhelming. Like, where do I even start? I find that one has a lot of those kind of lists that can help you kind of just get a feel for what's going on and how to start tackling it.
Her
Um,
Instagram account is also great just to kind of get you a snippets of like where to start with. Like it's a one that was kind of like the gateway drug to all the different trip report and online blogger world of Disney that as soon as I started following the food Disney food blogs, then all of a sudden there was like a million different things that I could look at. So
yeah.
it was good.
And I find too when you start looking those up, you're right, like whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, then you'll get some like other like suggestions and then you can definitely go down the rabbit hole. There's lots of resources out there. Disney Deciphered is another one of my favorite podcasts that I've listened to. It's shorter episodes, which I kind of like. It's 30 to 40-minute episodes. And they do a lot more of sort of just like good planning guides. They throw in some trip reports in there that the two hosts go on. And then they have sort of some best of episodes. So, best moderate resorts or best, places to eat again, so it gives you a good sampling of, what you might want to look at when you're planning your trip. And then there's another, Capture the Magic Trip Tales is also another podcast where they do trip reports. I'm on episode 36 talking about actually Steph and mine very first trip to Disney when we were just two moms starting out, going on our first trip to Disney
Which
together.
feels like a lifetime ago now.
I know it feels like so long
It's
ago.
so crazy.
Um, but those are just some of the things that I kind of will just like listen to, like as I'm like maybe I'm going for a walk or maybe I'm driving around picking up my kids, and it gives me ideas of what we might want to do, or you just get little tidbits here and there of like what people will say that they've tried and like worked or didn't work. And so you just keep accumulating the knowledge, and then it helps you to just have a way better trip.
It's totally true. I can't imagine just going to Disney, any Disney's, and buying tickets at the window and running free because it would be the most disorganized, chaotic thing ever.
It makes me
And
so sad for those people because I'm
oh,
like,
I
you're
know.
just gonna have a really rough day. And I know this was Paula's comment too, was that like planning it out definitely made a huge difference to their enjoyment of it because you weren't walking in being like, why can't I ride this ride? What's a virtual queue? How do I deal with that? And like, especially
Uh,
if you only have, say, one day at that park and then you're going to miss out on something that maybe you would have enjoyed, or at least knowing what you're missing out on. I know another friend of mine when she was planning her trip saying, I don't know if I want to do this ride. And I said, look, if you don't tell your kids it exists, they probably won't know. But like then you kind of know to avoid it because you don't want to ride it. You don't they can't ride by themselves sort of thing, right? So just kind of having that knowledge helps to guide how you want to do your Disney trip.
if you're worried if it kills the magic, knowing how a ride goes, it definitely does not. It's still a very fun experience to go on. Like I had watched most of the Rise of the Resistance ride through before I had gone on it because it was the one ride I was willing to try to take a risk on when I was pregnant. And it ended up being totally fine when I learned what the drop was. So,
Yeah, and you know what? Like especially if you have kids that might be nervous or even adults that are potentially nervous, there's the point of view videos on YouTube for pretty much every single ride. So, it's not a bad idea, especially with like little kids that they're going to do better with it when they've actually seen it one time and they kind of know what to expect, right? So it's still thrilling, but maybe not scary because they knew what was going to happen a little bit, or they kind of,
exactly.
yeah, they know, okay, it's going to be a little bit dark, but it's not dark the whole time, or, whatever might trigger them. So we're going to kind of close out the episode, Steph, with some acronyms. I'm going to test you and see. So
Oh,
this is the other thing you'll notice is that Disney likes acronyms. So if you're listening to podcasts or reading some blogs, um, you'll see acronyms pop up a fair amount. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
ROTR.
Oh, Rise of the Resistance.
Nailed it. All right. VQ.
Virtual queue.
Yeah, nailed it.
Oh, wow. Whew, this is
Um,
stressful.
BTM.
BTM. Oh, I don't know.
I'll give you a big hint. It's going to be closed all of next year, and I'm so sad about it.
Oh, you did tell me this. Why can I not remember this now?
It's the
Uh,
wildest
oh,
ride in the
Big Thunder
wilderness.
Mountain. Big Thunder Mountain.
All right. MMRR.
MMRR. Minnie and Mickey's Runaway Railroad.
Yes, except Mickey and Minnie's, but you nailed it.
Minnie,
I'll
yeah,
give it to you.
Mickey and Minnie's.
This one should be easy. 7DMT.
Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
All right. Last one I'm gonna give you. LLMP.
LLMP.
There's
Oh no.
also an LLSP.
There are other Disney people that are probably flipping out right now.
They're
Uh,
screaming at you, Steph.
I
It's
know.
obviously this. All right, I'm gonna
So
put you
I
out of your
want.
misery.
All right.
Lightning Lane Multipass
Multi-pass.
and
Okay.
Lightning Lane Single Pass. This is the new iteration of
Those,
the
yeah.
the skipping the line nomenclature. So you did pretty well, Steph. I'll give that to you.
I know.
I think you still got a passing grade.
Okay, well, that's fine. As long as I kind of passed. It's been that kind of day that if I didn't get any of them, I wouldn't have been surprised. So
Yeah, sometimes days are like that, Steph.
I
Yeah.
know.
So here's that was a little taste into like sort of how we plan our trips. We've got a lot of trips coming up, so it's exciting. We're gonna have a special pre-trip report next time. I'm actually going back to Disneyland with my family. And this time we're actually going to Universal Studios Hollywood. So we're going to take a little detour away from Disney briefly to also talk about Universal and what I'm going to do there with my kids. And then we've got like trip coming up to
I
finish
know.
up
So
our race
many.
series. Yeah, so
Yeah.
many trips coming up.
Uh, the one tip I will tell people about planning a trip, be prepared to spend money. Just don't go and think like, oh, I'm going to do Disney and I'm going to do it cheaply. No, 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 no. Be prepared to spend money because it makes life so much easier. So as long as you go in with that mentality, it's actually a great time. Because as we learned, we tried to wait in the lines like peasants and we couldn't do it. We just could not. And so now, even though I'm going back with all my children, I will spend the money so that I don't have to wait in line like a peasant with them.
Yeah,
That is all.
it's a good tip because you're right, Steph. Like, you can try and get around it and that's great, but it's like if you're just going to go sort of the one time with your kids, it's just worth it to say, you know what, we're just going to have such a better experience and this might be a one and done for us, like it was pretty much for Paula, even though then she came to Disneyland with us.
That was a different experience, though. There were no children there.
Yeah, so anyways, but yep, that'll be it for us. I think that'll wrap it up. So until next time, Steph.
Tweedle out.